opposite points.
Which got
Some water.
There. Remember that stuff.
Goodness.
It helps.
I'm Laurence Cole. I'm here with my dear friend Walla. We are offering in this gathering at the Global Earth Repair Conference at Fort Worden in Port Townsend, Washington. We are locals, and we've been locally providing communal grief tending and with our own particular passions around why that's an important part of the movement towards local resiliency and full-hearted attention to the needs of the earth where we are, and how we can come together to be enough in love with each other and enough in love with our lives and enough in love with the place that we live in to actually commit to making a difference in these dire times.
I'm Walla, here with my friend Laurence. Yeah, we've been collaborating, conspiring to bring back some traditions around grieving in community and how it's important to not isolate. There's a tsunami of grief that has been rising and rising. It's accelerating. The rate of change right now is accelerating, as well as the changes themselves are accelerating. So the grief has been piling up faster than we can deal with it, faster than Prozac can deal with it. So it's time for us to come together and acknowledge that. And the aliveness that comes from that is received as a blessing to the land that we're on. Saying, yes, they are actually listening. And I can tell because the tears are coming and the rage is coming and the shouts of joy are coming, and they are connecting through the grief. So we had a panel yesterday, a discussion about these topics. We're just airing it in a public space to talk about grief is pretty new in the overculture. Well, it's ancient, but for this culture, it's new. And the other thing I wanted to say about why I'm here is that so much healing in my life has come to me from the land herself. When I first came here, I was running from New York as fast as I could to get away from there. Long story, but I collapsed around a maple tree for years. And I just owe so much gratitude to that tree for receiving my tears and my confusion. And this is a way that I can kind of share some of that medicine, and that feels really important to give back in that way.
Thank you for being here. You mentioned the separation and the isolation and the loneliness that we're experiencing more and more in today's world. And so often in today's world, our grieving is also done in isolation and loneliness. And we're here at the Global Earth Repair Conference in community. You can probably hear the kids in the background. What is the benefit of doing this in circle? What is the benefit of doing this in community as opposed to being alone in it?
There's benefits all around. I mean, there's the personal benefit that I experience when I'm feeling held by a circle of people. Just there's an atmosphere in attention itself, in the presence of even just one other. But when there are many others that are all bringing their attention not only to me but to each other, there's a field that's set up that seems to be a resonant field. For me, I notice that's when my own tears, my own fullness all the way into my bones. I feel my grief being fully embodied pretty much then more than anywhere else. Is that and because I see grief as a friend to me, it does bring me more alive. It brings me more tender, it brings me more raw, it brings me more vulnerable. And I love those feelings. I've come to fall in love with me in grief. And also I'm a joy practitioner. I bring great exuberant expression of joy through song, but also I use song to also take people into deep places, edgy places, to feel. But we need these just naturally generated, human-generated fields, resonant fields of receptivity and awareness and welcome, what I call being permissionaries for each other, to be exactly and authentically where we are in our full emotional response to what life is showing us, leading us to, guiding us into, cooking us in the middle of, whatever, however you want to put it. How we're being worked, I believe there are currents in the living world that are on the side of everything that lives. That is to make sure you get your gift delivered, you get your medicine released into the world, because the world depends on everything being interrelated in the sharing of the nourishment necessary for everything to thrive at every level. And so that's I guess you could say that's my religion, and I believe that grief and singing and other natural technologies of belonging that don't require anything but what we were born with. I think life is very elegant and economical in that way. It gives us what we most exactly need to feel fully alive from birth. It's not about acquiring or accumulating or it's our birth right. It's how we feel right. So, that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
It's our birthright to grieve together, to not have to bear it alone. In a lot of the grief ceremonies that we've been holding, I notice that there'll be an upwelling that certain people feel, and so they go down to the mat and they might cry or rage, and then the wave subsides and they come back into the group where everyone else is dancing, and then it's someone else's turn. So it's like this wave moving through the room of people who are gathered there. If one person was trying to bear all that themselves, it would break them. So coming together allows us to kind of shift the load. It's trying to carry an entire huge water balloon. Grief is often described as a liquid substance, and trying to carry the whole thing yourself. But when we all try and hold it, it's bearable. And when people go around and they share what's going on for them, there are these audible sighs of, I can so relate to what you're saying. You don't feel so alone in what you're carrying, because you realize each of us has a little bit. Otherwise, you can become really isolated within your own woe is me, dig yourself into a real pit of despair. And a lot of what is called depression these days is really frozen and suppressed grief, depression and anxiety. A friend of mine gave me a little helpful tip. If you're feeling what someone might diagnose you as depressed, you can ask yourself the question, do I feel empty or do I feel full? Do I feel overwhelmed and overflowing? Often if you feel full to the brim, that you just can't take it anymore, that kind of thing, that's grief. different from, depression where you just feel like there's nothing. And I rarely hear that. And so these are some of the biggest health problems, public health problems that we have are depression and anxiety. And most of that is pent up grief. So this is a really important technology that's ancient, just to come together. People have always had grief. I mean, the world has always had problems, had death, had loss, had estrangement, had people, at odds with one another. But we always were able to come together to move through that with one another. So we're not doing anything new here. It's perhaps new for this culture, but it's bringing some of these old technologies back.
Let's say, because you can't really do it alone in the fullness of it, that when you discover that and you need your people, and your people need you, you become a people. You start feeling that quality of connectedness. And for me, it's in terms of the culture of separation and the commodification of everything and the need to have people think they can fill the gaping maw of emptiness and loneliness and something is just seriously not okay, and if I could just buy something and get this or accumulate, have all the cars that millionaire has or whatever, it's like, but we know that's not, you can't really, it's a longing to belong, that we are hardwired with a longing to belong and a longing to be longed for, that our people need us and long for what we carry. And that's from birth, that we know that we've come in with something that we were welcomed in that way. Wow, here you are, this amazing new being that's bringing medicine that's never been here in exactly the way you bring it. And it's our job to find out how that is so unique and different so that it meets the needs of this specific time for the people, and that means the tree people and the lilac people and the stone people and all the people, the more than human world people as well, that there's this community that's waiting for your particular arrival. And that's what traditional culture offered. And so when there was a loss in that regard, it was felt hugely. And so it required, even in the grieving, there's a reinforcement of a sense of belonging. Does that make sense? So and that furthers the sense of connectedness. So in fact, like Stephen Jenkinson says, when somebody says, I lost my father or lost my favorite dog or whatever, big losses, he says, why did you do that? You didn't, somehow you...
Go find them.
You can find them, you can keep, it's a new quality of relationship because of the physicality and the smell and the sound of the voice may not be exactly as it was, but you can still have a sense of the presence and connection that brings another kind of aliveness to the relationship. But we've lost that because, again, that reinforces the sense that there's no break in our belonging. But it's like our commodified culture requires everybody to be broken in their belongingness.
Right.
And so, because it's the foundation of shame and consequent illnesses and addictions, that there's big bucks in those things. And so, I mean, to us, doing this work is a form of activism. To stand up and introduce people to the fact that their greatest wealth is each other. And that is going to see you through times when the artificiality of we don't need each other, which is this make-believe culture that is imposed on us and reinforced through the kind of education we pump into people. That's a lie. And we can begin to not just talk about it, but provide a direct experience that, wow, I feel more connected with this group of people I spent the last 2 or 3 days grieving with, or even last night, 2 hours with, than I have maybe ever in my life.
Yeah.
I feel more like these people are with me. And they hold me in their hearts as I'm holding them in mine, And this is the, it brings an experience that the lie that we don't need each other, it is erased in those moments of recognition, and it's palpable because it's not just a belief; it's a sense of presence with your people that is, sometimes almost cut it with a knife. It's that tangible, and I don't know any other way to get there. I mean, we do it. So there's these ancient technologies of belonging. Of course, they evolved with us because we do need each other to live in a respectful way and within the carrying capacity of the land that we live with, that gave birth to us and that has offered its gift to us so that we can help everything flourish. That takes attention and a duration of presence and a collective presence to do that well and to do it respectfully. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on, but
it's life-changing to experience that for people. And I know when I first did a grief ceremony, the sense of, I can't believe I've gone this many years without ever doing this. It felt so right and so affirming. And it gave me permission to, now that I felt that there was a community there holding me, that then when the grief does come up on my own, when I am awake in the middle of the night, that I'm not utterly terrified that I'm going to be crushed by the grief, because I experience it. I let it rage through my body. I let it really burn through and move me just to the full extent that it could. And I survived it. And I felt ebullient. I felt triumphant after that. And so, similar to a yoga practice, that, you can't spend all your time in a yoga class. You're going to have to leave the class. You fortify your practice during that time with everyone. Then most of the work is actually during your life, when you're just doing your day and something comes up. So in those moments, when I do a grief ritual every so often, it helps me touch base, like, this is okay. This is actually how life works and how it gets me to feel and be more open and to re-inhabit my body and re-inhabit my traditions, re-inhabit my ancestral gifts, and that I can feel free to dive into those places more when I'm alone. Because it's not that, I'll never be alone in grief again, but it just means now I'm not utterly terrified when it does come up when I'm alone. And I'm really, really grateful for that. It's been totally life-changing, and for me and for many people.
There's been such a stigma around grief. Yesterday you said something to the likes of, it's not actually breaking down, but a coming to your senses. And the stigma is being lifted as there's actually community developing around these grief councils. Can you speak a little bit to that? How it's bringing people together?
Well, I like the coming to your senses part. A big part of my work for my entire adult life has been somatic. So much denigration has been foisted upon the body. And so if we think of our bodies as the same elements that comprise Earth, we're made of carbon and water and nitrogen, and we are Earth. Our bodies are just a microcosm. And so that same disrespect that is the way we treat the Earth disrespectfully by digging the Earth up and blowing the Earth up and poisoning the Earth and all the things that we do the same to our bodies. So it's no wonder that we dissociate. I don't know if people are familiar with that term, but it means like there's so much pain and disrespect going on in your body that you have to kind of go way up and float up in your mind. And so much of my work has been to collect tools to help people to come back into our bodies and feel at home in our own skin. So it's a coming back into your senses, and that fear of that grief is I'm going to drown in it. It's going to overwhelm me. Keeps people up here in a mental realm. And when you're that disconnected, it's that much easier to treat the earth badly, to treat your family badly, to make people into an other. So this coming back into our senses is all part of repairing Earth. We are Earth. This is primary, to be able to feel. And, people, including Stephen Jenkinson, who you just mentioned, describe grief as not a thing. Grief isn't an emotion. It's not equated with depression or sorrow or despair. Grief is a muscle. It's a muscle that's been atrophied because of neglect, because of fear of being in the body. But once you start to realize that this is a muscle that you can actually flex, and that it feels good, not only good, but you feel alive. You feel competent with being able to actually feel. It's so remedial, because we're born. The human body is born to feel. That's why we're here. So it's really, really sad. It's really, really sad that we are so out of practice with feeling some of the most important emotions that make you come alive. So, the grief and the joy, the grief and the praise go hand in hand. And so when we cut off that grief, then we're also cutting off our access to feeling the emotions that we say that we want to feel, right? Like the joy and the gratitude.
Laurence, you mentioned yesterday, jokingly, but in all seriousness, a grief ritual is it's your idea of a good time. What do you mean by that?
Because I have more fun at grief rituals than anything else I do.
Isn't that ironic?
But it's to me, fun is humor, it's joy, it's feeling in love, it's feeling my prejudice and my snap judgments melt away. So I'm actually seeing people, and I'm also allowing myself to be seen. When my soul voice actually takes over and says, and it's just riffing on corners of my being that I didn't know they were lined up ready to start talking. But it's somehow, because I've come into this place, and in a regular way, it seems to be something that, my African teachers would say, in the village, we were either planning, doing, or processing ritual about 75% of the time. We did other things to make sure everybody is fed and so on, but ritual was the main important thing, because it kept that alive, your presence with your people. And you have to have that when you all depend on each other. You're not going to make it without each other, and so you need these processes to keep open you back up to what a pleasure it is to be alive with your people. And, people, I never went to that village where my teachers came from, but they said, these people don't even have forks. They sure don't have napkins. I don't think they have dishes. They don't have what we think of as you just go down to Goodwill and get that. It's not available. And they carry themselves like kings and queens of the world. And I've seen that. I've been in places where the people it's like, I'm such a good thing. And it's such a mystery to us. Most of us in this so-called opulent world feel so impoverished in terms of our sense of self as something valuable and good. But somehow, by doing this work together, people that come just, oh God, I'm such a, I'm just having people say, we get you. And actually, we've been there, and we're with you in this. And somehow, going through it together, you come back out, and you have exercise. It is a muscle. It's literally a muscle. The Tsutu Hilmaya, according to Martin Bartel, they say grief and praise sleep in the same bed. And I always do this gesture because the heart and the lungs they are the officials, according to the 5-element system. Of the lungs release grief, the heart expresses joy and praise and love. And it's the diaphragm that they rest upon. And when we move that fully, it oxygenates and changes the biochemistry of our whole system. So I asked people in the audience yesterday at this panel, I said, how many have just noticed like you're on the ground in despair and you're just crying and you finally you're done and you sit up and you like notice where you are and you see things seemingly with new eyes. My God, I never noticed how a snowberry leaf is made. Oh my God, look at that. Oh, these lilacs, I just feel like I'm being showered with the beauty of their aroma right now. I can feel it. It's like the windows of perception are cleansed, as they say. But it's true. Something has shifted, both the chemistry of compassion and the chemistry of a certain quality of receptivity to the beauty of being alive. Even though you still have some of that, but you still also, it's like there's this awe that is our birthright as well. Some people say we are here to God. We are here to be in a state of wonder. It's probably our highest function as humanity. And you have to exercise the facilities for holding that. And I would say, like today, we went to a workshop on rewilding agriculture. And it's basically, a lot of it is about noticing that, there are species of butterfly in Western Washington. 10 years ago, you could go pretty much anywhere. Now, there may be down to the last 20 somewhere in some high place in the Olympics. And this is, and we notice it. And I just going through that workshop, I went and took a nap, and I realized I didn't go to the altar. I didn't cry last night. I was busy doing this or holding space, just drumming, and then, but just having been there, I could go take a short nap and as soon as I lay back, I just felt, I have grief about those butterflies. Mm-hmm. I do miss them, and I can feel it, and I can let myself have that grief right now. I could do it. It's right with me, and it's my friend. I'm glad. And I don't have access to this if I don't keep on offering myself the gift of being with my people in this way. And when I say it, rightly enlightened self-interest or something that I lead Griefwork to all life, because I want my friendship with my grief to be alive, because it helps me it helps me be in love with life, and I believe in the proverb, or I want to live up to the proverb that says, when death finds you, may it find you alive. I want to be so fiercely in love with being alive. And it's what helps me to do that. So when I do see a butterfly, or I see the swallows nesting outside our front door, and I just notice that little tail of a sleeping swallow when I come in at night, and it's just like, feel that so fiercely and with such gratitude that they made it all the way up here from South America, and somehow they're finding enough insects to make that immense journey. So,
thank you. I could imagine that this is, while ancient, also quite new to a lot of people. And for somebody perhaps just coming across this work, just embarking down this path of exploration for the first time, perhaps in closing here, what would you offer to them as they step onto this path?
Well, we would hope that having these community grief rituals that we're so blessed to have in our little region, we have several, but they don't exist in most places. So you can feel in the company of others in nature. So something that I do is go out to a tree, and you can dig a little hole in the ground by the tree, or just offer your grief to the tree and feel held by someone in nature, that there are beings all around, and seek out grief rituals somewhere near you. It's a really good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Watching some juncos mating over there, that was really sweet. One of the big reasons, I think we're on the way to actually really noticing that we do need each other. Mm-hmm. That we're going to need to know how to stay together and keep falling back in love with each other. Respecting, re-looking at each other, taking another look. And this work is, I think, increasingly vital. So I think that the people that are in the front lines of that, of taking action to tend to the earth in a way that something has the best chance to come through these challenging times. We're going to need each other, and we need to keep on finding ways to keep respecting and caring for each other. And this is the work that I think helps more than anything I know in a collective, natural, built into the born with equipment to make use of these facilities for deepening into what we love the most.
May we all continue to deepen into what we love the most. Mm-hmm. Thank you both, really. Mm-hmm. It's been a gift, really meaningful gift to have you with us today. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you'd like more information on Laurence and Nalla's work, you can follow the link at the bottom of your screen. And blessings to you in your day from the Global Earth Repair Conference 2019.
Thanks, man.